letting people know that it's okay to feel depressed. It's okay to feel down. It's okay to have those really not so good days. But what is not okay is suicide is not, because it's a finality, it's that permanent. We're talking about fixing something, making it permanent, but we're not really, the solution has not been, or the issues have not been dealt with. And so that's why I say suicide is not an option, because there's so much more to you as an individual. There's so much more to fight for, to live for.
Everyone, and welcome to the How Do You Medicine podcast, where we talk to healthcare professionals doing healthcare their way. I'm your host, Dr. Nancy Joseph, aka the Dynamic Doc. And today, our special guest is Dr. Tola T'Sarumi, and she is a board-certified, award-winning psychiatrist and addiction specialist. She's also a wellness strategist and mother. So she started her post-secondary career at Georgia, or University of Georgia, where she got her bachelor's of science in chemistry. And then she went on to start her medical training at Columbia in New York, where she completed her psychiatry residency. And then she went to the Brigham or Mass General Brigham / Harvard Medical School, where she completed her fellowship in addiction medicine. And since then, she has literally taken the mental health world by storm. She is currently working as an addiction psychiatrist at Mass General Brigham, but she's also the director of Dr. Tola LLC, but she's also the creator of the Addiction Support System. That's an online platform and a community program that really guides patients really to a place of wellness and recovery. And if that wasn't enough, she is currently Miss Elite US 2022 and has been featured in really numerous outlets. I couldn't even begin to name them all. And she, like I said, is a trailblazer in taking the mental health world by storm. And we'll get into all of that and all the things on today's episode. Welcome, Dr. Tola.
Hi. Oh my goodness. Listening to it, I'm like, really? Is that really me? I'm like, I love
it. It is you, sis. It is you. You did all of that. And then you just started.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on the show. So happy.
Thank you for coming. So let's start in the beginning, because I'm a chronological girl. So I like to start in the beginning where Dr. Tola, you got, your chemistry major, but
biochemistry.
I'm sorry, to biochemistry? Biochemistry. And you wanted to be a psychiatrist. Is that something where, man, ever since I was little, or is that something while your journey in undergrad, you decided, oh, you know what, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, so my journey to medicine, I've always wanted to be a doctor, and I grew up sickly. I had severe asthma, spent several times and months and days in the hospital. I think my family doctor was like my best friend, literally. I mean, I was always there. So for me, that was my exposure to the medical care, just having to navigate that, having asthma, parents always frightened, didn't know what to do. And it was always bad. So I spent lots and several days in the hospital setting. And so for me, that was where I believe that birthing came, where the desire to want to be a doctor all started or originated from. And as I progressed, yes, I got into, high school, college, took all sciences, did well in my sciences, and of course progressed through undergrad and applying to medical school. Now, I didn't always want to be a psychiatrist. I think psychiatry came to me. I didn't even know what it was, until, things down the line that kind of came together. I did know I wanted to be a doctor. And I find that, during that time when, trying to pick a specialty, it was just trying to navigate that. Of course, in medical school, you do like several rotations and you learn more. And I'm like, oh, this seems familiar, and for us, just for me, even just thinking about the Korean field, I wanted to go into oncology because I felt like I just had that persona and that kind of person to just speak to patients who are, at the end and terminal, diseases. And so that was actually the area I was interested in, just from my rotations. But then I did psychiatry rotation and I was blown away. And it made sense because I did have family members who had suffered from addiction. And I didn't even know there was a name for it, right? At the time growing up, and you're like, what is this? What does this look like? Depression wasn't something that was very prevalent, or substances wasn't something we spoke a lot in my family. It was kind of like a stigma in itself. It was just like that outcast part of the person of the family. But it was something that, I had an uncle who did have an addiction at the time. And so just understanding it through medical school, I was like, wow, this is what this is. And so there was a birthing that took place in there. And I think for me, just being a natural person, I tend to, I love to hear people's journeys. I love to hear their story. Who are you? Like, what has brought you to, this, beautiful, whatever it is, you're, accomplished, or who is that person that I'm looking at? What is their journey? And so I think for me, just finding that space and learning through this different, going through different specialties, it just resonated so much more with me. And, I think that's how psychiatry became about birthing. Unfortunately, there happened to be addiction there. So that was no brainer for me at that point in time.
Yeah, because I was going to ask too, because, for those who don't know, when you're doing medical training, oftentimes you can do, after residency, you can, just go and practice, right? Everybody doesn't do extra special training, which we call a fellowship, right? So it sounds like as you were doing your psychiatry residency, you were like, but also addiction seems like it resonated with you, would you say?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, for us, having my uncle, he, regular, oh gosh, wonderful, wonderful human being. I mean, I loved him so much. And he was just a really great person. And, when he was not strung out, he was the most lovable person. I mean, he was like a chef. He knew how to cook different kind of meals. I mean, it was always fun trying to go over to visit him. And, it's something you don't really understand, but you're like, well, what is going on? Why is he like this today? Why is he like this tomorrow? And then of course, there's that communication family, they're talking about it and you're like, what is going on? And it was just one of those hush hush kind of things and conversations, not really spoken a lot about in our family. It was a painful thing. It was embarrassing for the family. It wasn't something you're like trying to figure out, but I know that they did try, my mom in particular, my grandmother, try to get him into treatment. But as we know with addiction, it's a chronic, relapsing, remitting disease. And so even if you go for treatment today, doesn't mean it's over. You have to constantly work at it. And, if not, if you're going back to the same environment, that really plays a significant role in how you, in terms of relapse and just being able to work in the community. And so unfortunately for him, that was a cycle that he kept going back again to the alcohol and drugs at the time, and unfortunately lost his life to substances. Yeah. So that was something that just just stayed with us as a family. I guess for me now, being a psychiatrist and an addiction psychiatrist, I understand. And I understand, I'm like, there could have been more that could have been done. But I think part of this is that stigma that we continue to hear a lot about, which is, people don't want to talk about it. They're like, well, in our family, we don't talk about stuff like that. You don't expose yourself or expose your family, but it's something that is important to talk about because as we know that, with alcohol, there is a genetic component. So if your family is aware this is there and this is something that's prevalent in the family, you want others to be aware so that they're not moving in that direction or field to avoid it, being susceptible to an alcohol use disorder or other substances. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great to then use that as motivation to want to now, change the narrative.
Yes.
With that. And I think that is an amazing way to use something so sad and tragic, but use it as a fuel to be a blessing to so many others, so it doesn't get to that. And so, speaking of that, I think one of the things that, I follow Dr. Tola on Instagram, and she has a lot of quotes that I like, and I will repost her numerous times. And so, I would be remiss if I did not at least throw a couple of, hit you in the chest type of quotes from your IG and website. And so one of them says suicide is not an option for anyone, but it becomes the only option when wholeness is absent. And I think that I don't know that wholeness is something that is emphasized enough in general. And so I wanted you to speak to, because, one thing that I mentioned before, for those who didn't catch it, Dr. Tola is a wellness strategist too. So talk to me about what wholeness means, and then maybe how that played into you deciding to be a wellness strategist.
Sure. So, when we think about medicine in itself or anything mental health, we talk about that at different dimensions that it really breaches. So the first is your psychological, your social, your environmental, your mental, your physical, all of these areas are affected. And so if you want to strive just in general, you have to be well in all these areas. These pillars, these are like your bedrocks, right? I mean, if you're ill in your physical health, there is no way your mental health is going to, it's not going to be affected. It will be affected. And so because you're feeling, you're in bed, you're in the hospital, you're not well, you're eventually going to start feeling sad, frustrated, what is going on? How long is this going to take? That just kind of cycles and spirals into something else. Then you're talking about the emotions that comes along with that. Granted, maybe you have family. What is going on there? What is your family history? Was there trauma there? Were you born into, events that occurred during childhood that have not been dealt with? So all of this, our areas are affected. And so when you talk about wholeness, all of these areas have to be whole. You have to be well. You have to even have sought treatment for, whether it's the trauma you face in childhood, whether it's your physical body, if you're not exercising or, eating right, or making sure you're going to your family doctor to make sure that you're, getting your physicals yearly, which people always forget. Get your physicals,
right,
guys.
Right.
So it's so important just to check in to see, okay, how am I doing? How is my cholesterol? How is my blood sugar? So all of these things, they play a significant role in your wholeness as an individual. And so, of course, we talk about suicide. Suicide is a discriminator of no one, right? Not race, not age, not height, not looks, none of that. It doesn't care. It comes and it creeps and it swallows and steals everything that has to do with you as an individual. And so it's so important that we're talking about it. We're openly talking about it. We're not, there's that, quote unquote, stigma with it, where nobody wants to talk about it. You hear about suicide and, families or in things that have occurred. And it's like, well, we don't talk about that. We don't do this, and so it's an area that it's tough, at times, but it's something that has to be addressed. One of the things we talk about in psychiatry is if you ask someone, are you feeling suicidal? It's not planting a seed. It's actually finding out where they really are, because sometimes people just need you to ask them those harsh and hard words, and they will let you know, yes or no. It doesn't mean that you're going to make them start thinking about it, but that brings a thought to them to, make them understand that, wow, she felt I was doing things in a way that, or, he felt I was doing things in a way that I was moving in a path that didn't, resonate with who I am as an individual. And so these are things that, would enlighten that individual or whoever the person is to say, you know what, I think it's time that I seek help or seek treatment. And that's what we're trying to do with, breaking the stigma with mental health, letting people know that it's okay to feel depressed. It's okay to feel down. It's okay to have those really not so good days. But what is not okay is suicide is not, because it's the finality, it's that permanent, we're talking about fixing something, making it permanent, but we're not really, the solution has not been, or the issues have not been dealt with. And so that's why I say suicide is not an option, because there's so much more to you as an individual. There's so much more to fight for, to live for. Life is not easy. We all know that. Right. But we have to work through, this resilience that builds in through whatever obstacles we place. And we have therapists, we have psychiatrists, psychologists, so there are mental health specialists out there who are out, this is what they've, gone to school for, and this is what they want to do to help people who are suffering, and these are silent sufferers, I can go on and on, but let me pause here.
Perfect. No, I know it's a great summary. Dr. Tola, I wanted to ask a little bit about, being an emotional wellness strategist. I have to say that is, we were, talked about, wholeness just now, and we talk about how important that is, and we talk about, the tragedy that is, suicide, and really how, you just said that it's important, I think that's a great point you made. Talking to someone about like whether or not they're suicidal is not making them have the thought. Do you know what I mean? I think that's important point to emphasize, because I think a lot of people is like, well, maybe if I never said anything, they wouldn't have even thought that to be an option. When in reality, the risk of not talking about it is far greater than whatever that particular fear. And so in talking about, being whole, and talking about how to make sure you're, that it doesn't get to that, let's get into how you even decided to really take your career to the next level to be an emotional wellness strategist. Well, first tell us what is that? What does that mean or entail? And what made you take the leap? Because again, you could just, you have a good job. You're a psychiatrist, you're a specialized psychiatrist. You could have been like, you know what? I'm good. I have a job. I'm working. I have, financial security. I just mentioned you're a mom. You got a beautiful daughter. Listen, your life is, you could have been like, my life is full. But no, she said. No, she said.
It just comes with that drive, right? We all are striving for more. There's something that you feel like you can be doing. And I think for me, when I think about it being an emotional strategist, when I hear conversations, there's one thing, people are nervous enough. They don't like the idea of a therapist. They don't like the idea of, I have a psychiatrist. They're like, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy, and that face. And I'm like, no, you don't have to be. It's in fact, we have to change our terminology. We don't use crazy, right? It just means that you have some challenges. And I always have to break down, like diabetes, hypertension is no different from you having depression. It's no different from anxiety and all the other illnesses that are out there. So, when you think about it, people are not very excited to talk to a psychiatrist, but they will talk to an emotional wellness strategist, right? Mm-hmm. When we talk about wholeness, it cuts across all dimensions there. And, because we're still taking you as an individual, what is causing you so much pain that you feel like you're just not emotionally fit? You're emotionally struggling, right? Everything stems from somewhere. Was it childhood trauma? Was it addiction? Was it abuse? Is it a financial challenges? Is it relationship? What is it? So it all stems from somewhere. And so the goal of an emotional strategist is trying to sift through it, right? And pick up all the plugs and figure out what is exactly it is that you're dealing with, and how do you incorporate that into living a fulfilled and, well-fulfilled life. And so that's really what we're doing. And so we're incorporating every aspect in there. We're learning more, digging deep, right? In a way you think about it, you're hearing everybody's a coach these days. And so, it's almost in a way you're coaching them, you're trying to give them the tools necessary for them to navigate this very beautiful world that we have, and so, just being able to do that, it's so much joy and satisfaction in there. And people always want to share, especially, of course, being with the background of psychiatry, confidentialities are a thing. And so just having that safe space to talk about what you're going through, the challenges, and feeling like, you know what, I'm being heard. Someone is listening to me, and it's a safe place. I don't have to worry about my girlfriends hearing about this, whoever it is out there, my business, so these are just the same approach, same approaches. And then of course, with wellness, everything is important, even when you think of, when we talk about psychiatry, we talk about depression. One of there are different like tiers in terms of looking at the treatments for depression. One of it is, is under like the mild form. So we talk about exercising, right? Exercising is critical for your well-being, not just your emotional, but also your physical being, because we know that it releases endorphins that helps promote that kind of gives that extra push, extra motivation to get things done. And so we're literally going through all dimensions, and I just recently wrote a journal, and in the journal, it has the 8 dimensions of health. And so part of it it starts on the spiritual, because if your spiritual life is not, if you don't know who you are or what you identify with or which higher power you believe in or whatever it is, you have a problem with identity issues, right? So that's, a first way kind of to address that. Then we look at the educational, we look at your environmental, we look about intellectual, we look about the emotional, your physical well-being, so it just learns, just trying to understand who am I and what am I doing and how do I navigate life, through all there's just so many things, and life is moving so fast and evolving really fast that if you're not able to catch up, you're going to be stuck in a place where you're like, I don't know how to get out. And so our goal is to help you, redirect you to those spaces and places to get you into a place of complete wellness. So, yes.
That sounds great. Like, I think a lot of us have been going through life well enough, but not complete wellness. And quite frankly, I would even venture to say that a lot of us don't know well enough, because we may not have ever seen. I mean, not know we're like completely well, because we may not have ever seen complete well. Complete wellness may not have been something we witnessed. Therefore, you don't know to want it, desire it, or even if it's something that is to be a goal. You know what I mean? And I think in talking about all of those elements that you mentioned, I know that we talked about that the program that you have it's like a virtual support system. So is that all like, just kind of levels or phases or components of the support system?
Absolutely, it is. I mean, because, we're talking about people who have addiction. Their addiction you didn't wake up and you started drinking, right? I mean, that's not the case. And even if you had, you had an opioid use disorder, a mom who had that, and you were born with that, it doesn't mean that that is your trajectory, right? We can still change that. We have the power to do that. And so we want to empower folks out there to know that we need to understand where you're coming from. Right. Is it genetics? Because a lot of times people don't even realize that there's a genetic predisposing factor in there. And so when they understand that, they're like, oh, my grandfather this, my mother this, my father this, then they're like, oh, so I had those natural tendencies. So for you want to then stay away from that. A lot of times by the time they're coming to us is because they're already prone to that. And when we say addiction is a broad term when you really think about it, because these days we are addicted to our phones. We're addicted to sugar. Right. We're addicted to food. So it's no longer addiction like the chemical that we're thinking, cocaine, alcohol, opioids, fentanyl, those heroin and things like that. There is those non-substances, there's, gambling as well. And so we're seeing that, while addiction, of course, has that still negative connotation to it, we have to say what it is and call it what it is and address it in that form and format. Because, we had a show and we're talking about, gaming, and I mean, we know it's made it to the DSM, and gaming is a big thing because people are striving and actually making a lifestyle on it. But is there a time where something becomes too much? So those are the areas we want to get to. And then can we help you navigate that? Can we help you cause a bridge in there and look at other alternatives and looking at it in a way that you're approaching it in a healthy way, that you're not completely consumed with it? We're now talking about the metaverse world, and NFTs and all of these things. So life is evolving. Are we going to stop? No, but we have to be equipped to be able to handle it and know, okay, you know what, there's a time to pause. Like you always hear your parents, now the parents are telling us, or, you know, you as a parent telling your children, you know, no internet, no iPhones on the dinner table. You have to be able to set limits and boundaries for all of this, the areas, you know, that we're dealing with. Addiction, things with food, you know, it's there. I mean, who isn't struggling with their weight these days? Everybody's trying to lose 5 pounds, 10 pounds. And so, you know, there is it, and it's an addiction to carbs, to sugar in itself. So there is a lot of work to be done in educating when it comes to addiction. It's not only substances, it's not only that negative, quote unquote, you know, heroin, cocaine, you know, alcohol. It's our day-to-day activities now. You are addicted to work, you know?
Listen, is that a DSM-4? Is that a DSM-4?
DSM-5? Oh.
I'm sorry, DSM-5?
We haven't got there yet, but there's non-substances.
Yeah, I would say I haven't.
Significant. Yeah.
You said you haven't gotten there yet?
No, they don't have work, but we are seeing that addiction spans through. It's not only our chemicals and substances. There is also non-substance addiction. So the biggest one that we, of course, focus on the DSM, and I know they're working on. They just did the revised, but they're also there are a couple of things and changes they're hoping to make, and I wouldn't be surprised to see more non-substance addictions there. But who knows? We'll see. But yes, but gaming is a big thing. Gambling is a big thing. It's not a substance, but it's a behavior. So there is that behavioral component with addictions. And, you know, it's always talked about in addition with, alongside with it, you know, as addictions. And so these are addictions that must be addressed.
Yeah, gaming, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's, you know, when I studied psychiatry, it was DSM-4. That just ages how long ago, Lord?
Yeah, I know.
So I think, you know, you hit the nail on the head saying that we have to, you know, modify and broaden our thinking of what addiction is, right? Because we only think about it in terms of hard drugs and all of that stuff. You know, and certain controlled substances. But as you just pointed out, it's behavioral. And I think the wonderful part about the system that, you know, you've created is that it's, you know, an all-encompassing, you know, you hit all of these things that just kind of help the person be whole. And I think one of the things that I would say a lot of people would agree they think about when they think of wholeness is healing. And another one of your wonderful quotes, but this one's from your Instagram, that it really spoke to me when I read it. It said, healing doesn't mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls your life. And that really hit me because I think oftentimes we think, you know, healing equals forgetting the damage or trauma we went through, and then it having kind of zero effect on us, and that's kind of like the goal for us to call ourselves healed. But it seems like this quote is saying something different. So can you expand on that, please?
Yes, and it's, you know, something I use a lot in therapy, you know, because people have gone through lots of, you know, emotional trauma, you know, physical trauma, you know, psychological, whether it's bullying, neglect, you know, whatever it is, they've gone through that. And so they're coming for help. Like, I want to move forward, but I cannot because the pain is unbearable. And I always tell them, well, the healing part, the forgiveness part is for you, not for the other person. You're not forgiving the person to forget, because you're not going to go back to something that has caused you harm necessarily, right? You know, you want to forgive so that you can move forward. You don't forget. And so we're not saying to go back to a place of trauma, you know, that reminds you constantly of trauma, right? The forgiveness comes with you being able to move forward and then step into, you know, your authentic self. And so looking at it from that aspect, you're looking at healing. You know, we're not trying to say the event or the trauma or the abuse or the pain never occurred. It occurred quite all right. But if you don't let it go, it's going to hold you bound. Everything you do, every step you make, you're going to see it. You know, you're going to hear it. Something is going to cause a trigger. Right. And that is the problem. And that's the key. And that is what we want to address, that trigger. because we want you to have power over the trigger so that it becomes normalized, that you no longer feel the pain, you no longer feel the self-doubt, you no longer feel the low self-esteem that is, whatever the situation might have been, that is holding you back or pulling you back. But now you're able to say, oh yes, I overcame that. Oh yes, I can share my story with this little girl here who is going through this, this, and this. And so that is the whole idea with that quote there. And it's something I use constantly in therapy, so constantly, even just with family, friends. And, I think it's so powerful, knowing that you are the one who is empowered to change that narrative.
Right. And the struggle or the trauma doesn't define you.
It does not.
Right.
Yes.
It doesn't define your story. Right. No more than a page in a book. It doesn't define the book. It's simply part of the book's story, right? Absolutely. It doesn't encompass the cover, nor does it encompass the entirety of it, but it's part of it. Whether it, albeit painful, but it's just, part of the journey. A piece of the puzzle is not the puzzle.
There we go. I love that.
You're not your struggle, Dr. Tola.
You're not your struggle.
You are not your struggle.
You're not.
And I think that's powerful to say, because so many times we identify with our trauma. Our identity is our trauma. You know what I mean? Like I am such and such a victim. I am such and such and that's not to say, as you said, that the trauma didn't happen. You want to pay homage, respect, and say, yes, this happened. But also, we don't want it to then rob you of anything positive that can happen to you, because now it's doing trauma times 10.
Exactly.
And I think that's very important, because I think healing is also undervalued. Because again, just like a lot of us go through whole enough, a lot of us go through healed enough with coping mechanisms that may not be, good longevity options, that they're just coping mechanisms so we can get through the next day. And next thing we know, 10 years later, we've just been coping. We're not completely whole. We're not completely healed, but we're whole enough and we're healed enough. And that's all we know. And that's all we strive for. And I think with hearing people like you, to say, hey, if you recognize and say that you're not healed, that doesn't mean you are your trauma. It just means you recognize you have more work to do. And that's okay.
That's okay. We want to normalize it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And because no one of us are going through life unscathed.
Yes, absolutely.
No one gets by.
Nobody.
Unscathed. It doesn't matter how cute you are. It doesn't matter how tall you are. Doesn't matter how big you are. Doesn't matter how small you are, how much money you have. Life does not discriminate. You will go through something.
Yes.
Struggles are different per person, but certainly struggles are existent.
Yes.
So then tell me about, because I was just talking about your Instagram and all of that stuff that, all of the inspirational things that are on there. And one of the things that I think I've seen you do is the Dr. Chala Show. And I really wanted to talk about that, because first of all, how cute does that sound? The Dr. Tola Show? Doesn't it sound like something? It sounds like something in the network.
You're speaking it, we're manifesting it.
That's right, folks. You heard it here first. And I was just like, I remember she was on my podcast.
Yeah.
And then your little logo on your show will be your glasses. It'll be your face and your glasses with the microphone.
Oh, look at that. Well, you're so kind. Thank you. Thank you. Well, the Dr. Chala Show, it's funny because I've always, I'm actually an introvert, when I think about it, but I like to talk to people and I like to get to know who they are. And so over the years, it's always something that has just, I've always just sort of done casually, not the show, but just talking to people, one-on-one, of course, different settings and things like that. And for me, when I started with residency and just getting to know people, the different challenges and seeing how mental health just sort of is, and, it's not something that people were comfortable with. And then the pandemic hit. So I think the pandemic, in a way, literally propelled mental health in itself, where people are like, what is going on with me? I'm anxious. I can't breathe. I don't know what's going on. Is the world coming to an end? I mean, what is happening tomorrow? Financial loss, grief, you were losing family members left, right, and just so many horrible things just happening all at once. And so we found ourselves, psychiatrists like in that space and medium, like, okay, they need to talk to therapists. They need to talk. I'm like, okay. And we're talking and we're saying almost the same thing in a way, differently, of course, to different populations and the different age groups that you're talking and speaking with, and just having them understand this. And the more I found myself doing a lot more webinars, communicating more, I found that there's so much more people don't even know. And I'm just like, you're literally just scratching the surface there. Like, who else is out there that doesn't know? And, I'd always I've loved like opera, so I can't, deny that. And I've always loved it. And I always thought, one day I could possibly be, have a show, but it was never something I really believed. It was just more like, how like, oh, this is so cool. I wish I could do this, right? I would say it was even different from medicine. Medicine, I wanted to do that. That was like it. And so, but I loved the idea and I was like, why not? What was stopping me? And so yes, of course, it's definitely a lot of things can stop you. You have to plan things right. And so that was really the birthing of it and where it came from. And so I started doing like one or a few shows here and there and talking to people, and I got positive feedback, and people like, oh yeah, they want to talk about this topic, that topics. And I was like, sure, there's so much to talk out there, to talk, a lot of information, a lot of topics out there that people need, like someone who's an expert to kind of help them break it out, or even bring on other people that is their field of expertise, to share the knowledge with them. And I mean, I feel like there's, the sky's the limit with that. And so that was really, how the birthing of Dr. Tola Show kind of came about. And then, of course, as we grow each day, we just finished a 21-day mental health challenge series in the month of March. And that was really phenomenal. And, we've launched our YouTube channel. So, it's really excited. And so we're just excited. I literally, I'm excited. Like, okay, this is good. I don't know where it's going, but I'm excited. And I'm hoping that, more people get to put in their input in terms of what do they want to see and what can we help them with? Because there's so much that people need help in navigating, whether it's anxiety, whether the ways, or dealing with social media, what do I need to be doing with it, and it keeps evolving. And so I always tell, my friends, I'm like, you guys need to stay on point, because our youth, they're going to like literally take over. And if you are not in tune with what's going on in that age range and age bracket, you get lost. And then you won't have the audience to be able to help those who are in need. And so for me, in addition to that, I'm seeing a lot of college students. I think the pandemic has really impacted that transitional age. And there's so much work that we need to do as providers for that age. I literally love speaking with parents, but I think even the parents are overwhelmed that it's so hard for them to deal with their own stressors in addition to their children, and trying to like, who is my child? What is going on with them? And so there's so much work for us as providers to help that transitional age right now, because they are in trouble. They are crying for help, and we need to be able to be there for them to help them out transition through school life. It feels like everything that maybe you went through as an adult, as when you were growing up, is a little different. So their level and ability to tolerate stress and, just the difficulties of how things are going, the finances, we're talking about whatever the economy is right now, all of these areas that bring in different kind of stresses for them. And so what do we do? How can we help them navigate these different areas and pathways? And so Dr. Tola Show is hopefully there to help them out in that, and we'll see how that continues to go.
Yes, and that's on IG, right? And that's like, is it in Instagram Live?
Yes, Instagram Live right now, and also my YouTube channel. So yes.
What's your YouTube channel?
Dr. Tola, and don't tell me I should know it by heart, but yes, I think I do have it here. It is Dr. Tola.
Perfect. And when does it come on?
Good question.
Or is it like you advertise it on your IG first?
I advertise on the IG, and then on different, like on Facebook, and so far that's what I've been using. So hopefully as we continue to grow, we'll take it from there.
And it's various professionals?
Yes, various.
Not just mental health.
not just mental health. I mean, I really enjoy, there were so many different speakers that we had. For example, during that 21 days, one was about self-defense, just learning about that and trauma and dealing with that, so, and then there was another just talking about pure burnout. And then we had, just talking about dental health or, so just different things. So because, when you think about wellness, it's everything that has to do with you from your head literally to your toes. So if we have to take it piece by piece, there's so much more out there. And then, of course, life is constantly evolving as what we're seeing. And so we have to kind of move along with it. And we have, things that are happening in the current events that are unfolding, and people having to deal with the emotions that is, coming, unfolding with these issues that are, of course, happening as you're waking up to things like that. So, yes.
So then here we are. We talked about your Dr. Tola Show, drtola.com, and all of the things you're doing. And that sounds like she's doing so much. This is great. And then we decided that we're also going to be in the Women of Achievement pageant. And we happen to be now the Miss Elite US 2022. So because you have ample amounts of free time, she said, of course. But the first question is, how did that, because it's for someone that, you're an introvert, you notice, and, pageants are, a little opposite side of being an introvert.
Absolutely.
But it's, that sounds like something that was like, something of purpose, of call that, that you did, and that was part of your purpose journey. So talk to me about how you decided to be part of that, pageant, and how it's been like since you were crowned.
Sure. So, it's funny because 20 years ago, I think, or 20 plus years ago, I was in a pageant. And at the time, it was trying to get a scholarship for schooling, college. And, and so I had been, done a couple of pageants, back then. And I never thought in my life I would 20 years later find myself, not to give my age away, but yes, to find myself in, doing pageants again. But I mean, I have to credit my friend who she is the current Miss International, Vanessa. And so she actually, got into it, and she's like, you need to be here. They're speaking to everything that you represent and everything that you're doing. I was like, I don't think so. I have 2 kids. I don't have time for this. I'm like, what am I going to be saying I'm doing? Walking around
2
with
kids in the pageant. And I'm sorry, I mentioned your daughter earlier. So she has 2 babies.
No. So like literally, so I'm like, I don't think I have time for that. She was very persistent. And of course, being that I had done it before, I thought, okay, well, let's even see what it's about. And so it's literally one of the goals for me there was, you know what, I do have this platform, breaking stigma with mental health. We're talking about addiction, suicide, which we've seen an increase in the past 2 years with the pandemic and just everything that has been going on in the world at large. And so it was like, okay, good. And everything I'm doing in my own personal journey, just sort of fit into that space. And I was like, okay, sure. As long as, sure, let's see. Let me even, look into it and kind of just take it from there. And that's literally what happened. And I mean, to be honest, I didn't even see it coming. I was just like, I'm doing this. This is a mission. This is a target. We need to educate people about breaking stigma with mental health. This is what people need to know. This is what they should be doing. And, I entered the pageant, and, the amazing, phenomenal women who were there sharing their different platforms. So, there's so much need out there. There's a lot of, domestic violence that were out there, just, different areas, just navigating through addiction areas. And then I'm there trying to break the stigma with mental health. And so it was truly an honor to be crowned. I didn't expect it, but I was very grateful for it. And so, since that, it's been really great. I've had, different media outlets, being able to meet with the mayor here in Boston, and just different speaking engagements. And, I know with the pandemic, it's kind of not making you out there, but now things are sort of opening up. So hopefully we get to do more with it. But it's just a different level in itself, because there's just a whole different platform of individuals and people and community that I have come to get in contact with, and just hearing their journeys literally it just swells and fills my mind. I'm like, wow, there's so much work that should be, that can be done and should be done with mental health. And so, I'm glad that I'm in that space, and definitely honored to be Miss LH US 2022. So it's been literally an exciting time.
Yes. And I think that's great that, so, you continue to be a champion for mental health in different platforms, whether through your LLC or through, various, platforms like the ones you just spoke about, or just in your, your just in general, your private practice, or just your organizations that you have. So what would you say, to someone who, or advice you give to someone who is, like you said, you mentioned the pandemic, that took a huge toll on a lot of people in various realms, from financial to mental. You mentioned domestic violence, which saw an increase during the pandemic, all of that. So what would you say to someone who may be dealing with depression, maybe dealing with addiction, or maybe dealing with substance abuse, and whether or not it's a new realm for them or not? What would you say? What piece of advice would you give someone who is going through that?
Yeah, that's a powerful statement. So, obviously, I would say it's different for everyone, but the first thing I would say is seek professional help. Don't suffer in silence. We are here to help you, just navigate that journey. We're here to help you. So definitely seek in professional help. I always tell them, 5 S's that I like to hold on to. And, that seeking professional is usually my number 5, but that is the key and core. But the most important thing when you're thinking about depression, anxiety, self-care, we're talking about doing here and there, doing things. There's a time for everything. It's not necessarily all at once, right? And so you really need to make sure you're taking time for yourself. As we're seeing with the depression, sadness, we're seeing high levels of burnout. And so, because we're stretched in so many dimensions and facets with everything that is happening around the world today. And so you want to take time for yourself, just be compassionate to yourself. It's okay to say no during this time. It's okay to, get a massage. It's okay to lock yourself up in the bathroom if you don't have anywhere to go, because people are still, not everyone is so comfortable traveling, right? So it's okay to just take some time for you and do you. That's the first thing I would say. So self-care, self-compassion. Number 2, I would say, is sleep. We talk about how underrated sometimes sleep is, but it is so powerful. If you don't sleep for 4 or 5 days, you will end up in the emergency room. I say that a lot, and I'm like, you can't not sleep, right? You have to sleep. And so, because it's important. It helps in rejuvenating, just being renewed, just a reset, right? And so you got to have healthy habits for sleep. We need to talk about healthy dieting, exercising, all of these things. It builds into your natural physique, and just being able to go, if you're panting all the time, then you're feeling weighed down. You're looking at yourself in the mirror. You don't like what you look like. It weighs down on you, cause self-esteem issues. Before you know it, you're sad, you're depressed. Here we are, and so you want to take care of all those things. Then you definitely want to, limit your social media. Social media is so powerful these days. And while it's great for so many great things that we know that it's doing, and here we are in podcasts, on TV, on YouTube, Instagram Live, all of these things, they're great, but you should limit yourself. You should not be there spending the entire day on it. So if you kind of, carve out an hour, like 30 minutes, whatever it is you want to do, get it done during that time frame, and then move to something else, because you want to keep your mind and your, just your mind guarded, and your heart, and, just even ability to function, right? Because if you're all that just scrolling all day, it weighs down on you, and it's actually very exhausting. And then there's so many things you're feeding into your mind with, and so that could in itself affect your well-being. And so we say, just guard that, limit it in terms of your social media. Then of course, stay connected with family and friends. In the world we live in today, it's so important to have your community, even if you don't have family. Some people say, well, I don't have anyone in my family. Build your community. you have to build some kind of support because we all need somebody. We can't do life alone. It's a very tough place. So you have your own community, you have something that resonates with you, or people that you can, you're able to flow with and just work with. That becomes your community. So that becomes your family. That becomes your new set of friends. And so we need that. Stay connected with them. And then, of course, if everything else, after everything, nothing is working, you want to seek professional help. Absolutely. Seek professional help because there is help waiting for you right here.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, and your website has, info too on being able to contact you at drtola.com. Yes. So, we've, kind of gone through all of your journey, the experiences you've had and the avenues that you've both contributed to and created. And so with that, I want to shift a little and talk about what if someone just wants to get started to be, maybe like the Dr. Tola of their field, someone who, wants to have an LLC, or, you have a blog on your website, or maybe they want to participate in more pageants to raise awareness for their cause or to raise funds and things like that. Like, what advice would you give those people who are like, what she's doing sounds great. I don't even know how to start an LLC. I don't even know how to start a blog. And do I Google pageants? Like how?
So that's a lot of different areas to navigate.
All of which are you.
All of which are me. So what I would say is get in contact with one first.
Right. You're like, talk to me. But and feel free to do one and not.
Yeah. So of course, having a business, you have to know that you want something, and having a business, there's one thing having a business, there's another thing working for another person. I mean, I have a private practice as well as I'm fully employed, and I love both. I love my job, I love what I do. And that's important. Make sure you love your job, right? Because if you don't, you'll be in trouble. So life could really be hard with that. And so I would say, building a practice, you have to know what you want for yourself. What is the end goal? Are you trying to have more freedom so you can have time for yourself, your family? What is your, like, you're looking at your 3-year plan, like 1-year plan, 3-year plan, 5-year plan. What do you want for you? So are you trying to create more space where you're like, okay, I only want to work 4 days a week so I have time for my family, or so I can travel more, or whatever it is. So that will begin to steer you in the right direction. Like, okay, so these are the steps that I need to take, in getting, having a private practice, or building a business on, by itself, whatever it is. And so that, I think those are the things you have to figure out. What do you want for yourself? That's the first thing. So like when it comes to the pageant in itself, you have to just know that you want to do something extraordinary, because being, going into pageantry it's an extraordinary thing, right? Because now you're no longer just scaling the fences of, oh, I'm smart, I'm intelligent, but what do I have to offer? What is it about me that I want to share with the world? What is it about my passion that people don't know out there? And, just going for it, believing in yourself, and don't give up. One of the things with the Women of Achievement is there's really no discrimination with yourself, your looks, your weight, any one of those things, right? It just looks at the whole package. And so when we talk about mental health, we're looking at wholeness. And so again, the Women of Achievement is also an area where it does look at the whole package and the whole individual as is. And so I think that those are really great areas to navigate, and just to, just looking up the information and just doing it. So don't be afraid to do it. Like, just do it afraid, right? Even if you're scared, just do it. Because you're the only person who will hold you back. I mean, there always will be distractors. There will be naysayers. get a vision board, write out what you want for you. I'm a spiritual person. I pray a lot. I believe in God. And so everything I want to do, I put it out there and I say, these are the things I want to do. It doesn't necessarily mean everything is happening at once because, we're only one person, and then you want to be mindful of yourself as well. But there's a time and season for everything. And so you want to pray about it. You want to put it out there, put on your vision board, look at it and see what can fit in this at this junction, at this stage right now. What do I need to do now? And so I think that is important for you to be able to just say, okay, well, I'm doing this because this is where I would like to get to. And be very specific. And remember that, it's okay to be afraid while you're doing it. It really, really is, because sometimes we don't know what we're going to get. I mean, doing the pageant, I wasn't sure. There were wonderful, beautiful women out there. And I was like, I'm not sure, but all I know is, hey, I'm here and, I'm going to do my best. And so, yeah, so that in itself was definitely a joy and just honored to be honored. And
right.
So, yes. So I think in that retrospect, of course, you just have to be intentional. Be intentional. Don't be afraid to just go out there with distractors and naysayers. You're going to have to block them out, even if they're the closest to you, because not everyone who is close to you is going to support you. And you have to make that bold decision to say, I'm going out there and I'm doing this regardless. I'm not doing anything that's going to put your life in danger or anything like that. But of course, mindful, I want to do this. I can attain this. What is holding me back? The only person holding me back is me. So I think, you have to have that intention and that goal set and that boldness to just say, I'm doing it and going out there and doing it.
Got it. Do it scared, be intentional, and do it anyway. I love it. With purpose, with passion, and with confidence. Yes. And I think, and so that brings me, because we talked about how challenging it could be to do things scared. So in your journey thus far, what would you say has been your biggest challenge?
I had something there, but I think the biggest challenge is just navigating life in itself. We talk about nothing is necessarily, life doesn't throw everything to you. You have to work hard for it. So my journey itself was not always easy. It took a while before I got into med school. It took a while before I got into residency, but I never stopped. And so, my advice for you is don't ever give up. Life has its journey. It's going to throw different things at you, but what do you do when it does? Keep going, just continue to pick it up and continue to go with it. And so for me, regardless of what I've been through, I was pretty much ill. I was sick, really sickly. I think it scared parents, as a child. And so, but I just knew that I was going to be a doctor. I knew I was going to do this regardless of the situations that stood in front of me. And I went with it, and I don't take no for an answer, actually. So it's one of those things. I'm like, no, she didn't just say no to me, because that means you just literally fueled me to do.
Okay, listen, that's the key. Be like Dr. Tola said, did you say no or not yet? Because you said no and I heard not yet.
Yes.
But
it's important though, in everything, make sure you take time for yourself. Take time for your family, take time for your loved ones. And the rest will just fall into place. It really would. And I can't stress this enough, but don't give up. Life is not easy, but it's not easy, but it's not impossible. And you will not be the first to go through a particular challenge. Someone else has had to go through that, and they've scaled through, or they've gone to a path where it has led to success and victory. And so I would say, keep the faith, if you keep believing, and definitely just do it afraid.
I love it. And so I think that's a great segue to kind of close out our podcast with this question. What are you most proud of?
I am so proud of my children, I guess I would say, my babies. I have twins. So they give me joy. So, I'm Dr. Tola here, Dr. Tola here, Dr. That here, whatever here, but I'm mommy when it's at home. And so they are my joy, and, just being able to take off all the scrubs and just be with them right there. And so that would be my greatest accomplishments. And it's just a joy to be able to mother them. And that in itself is not easy too. But
Right.
but we do it still. And so much to learn, but they're just a bundle of joy. And so yes.
Oh, I love it. Mommy with the babies. And is it, so I know one's a girl.
And the other is a boy.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yes.
Oh, boy and a girl, baby. Oh, I love it. I think that's, we had a great episode with you just kind of unpacking from beginning to end the things that you've done and how far you've come, some of the challenges. And I think you've really inspired a lot of people and really encourage others to get whole, get healing, get wellness, whether in all aspects, really. And so what is next for you?
I'm gonna go home and sleep.
Okay.
No, I know, I'm kidding. So right now, I have my private practice. I'm working full time. I have the Dr. Chala Show. Everything. I think at this point, I'm just trying to build on it. So trying to expand as we continue to grow, building on it, expanding, getting more. Doing a lot of talks and speaking engagements coming up. So that's busy. But that's great because we're talking about fun stuff, mental health stuff. So that's always nice to do. And then of course, just, hopefully expanding more with the Dr. Chala Show and, just we'll see how that continues to grow in itself. But yes, I'm an author, so I have the journal out there. And so that's exciting as well. And so just, getting more, just doing it all, right? And just not limiting myself. Remember, it's one life and you want to make an impact. And my goal is really to make that impact, just normalizing mental health in as much as, we can make it normal. I want people to feel like it's okay to have a psychiatrist. It's okay to have a therapist. We know we should go for a physical yearly. It's okay to have someone you talk to and not feel shame, not feel like, is there something wrong with me? Because even as psychiatrists, we're encouraged to have our own psychiatrists and therapists. So it just makes you an empowered and informed individual. So I think that is really my joy and my goal really for what I'm doing with everything I'm doing, which is normalizing mental health, breaking the stigma, making you feel like it can come to your home and it's okay. Yeah.
That's great. You're not alone. It's okay. Even psychiatrists have psychiatrists. So that's all, and it's all right. Yes. And so where I think that's a great way to, wrap up this wonderful episode. Where can people connect with you? What's your website, Instagram, all the things, and what's the name of you? I know you say you're an author, so drop the name of that too.
Yes. So of course, website is www.drtola.com. That's the website. So drtola.com, my email address, info@drtola.com. Once you log on to the website, you can get, information on booking an appointment, whatever it is that you want or you need, whether it's therapy, coaching, seeing medication management, getting more on wellness strategy. So you can definitely connect or being a speaker on Dr. Chala Show. So there's a different ways to navigate that. And of course, Instagram at Dr. DrTolapsychmd, at Dr. DrTolapsychmd. And so that's the Instagram. And then YouTube is also Dr. Tola. I think it's drtola.com. So, but yes.
Yeah, because then it's Dr. Tola.
Yeah, Dr. Tola. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it is Dr. Tola. So I think it's the YouTube logo.com and then the / Dr. Tola.
Yep, or you can search and it's dr.tola, right? Not like the word doctor.
Exactly. So DRTOLA, T as in Thomas, OLA. So yes.
Yep, and then it's Dr. Tola MD or Dr. Tola PsychMD on
Instagram.
On Instagram. Perfect. So good, everybody who's either listening or watching, whether you're on a podcast platform or YouTube, go ahead and get connected with Dr. Tola. Get your life. Clearly, she's doing all the things, and she is getting her entire life and is living her life wholly. I like to thank Dr. Tola T'Sarumi, for bringing light to our podcast episode today and some wisdom and some fire quotes. And I really appreciate you for being our esteemed guest. Thank you so much. And I would like to thank our listeners or people viewing this for tuning in. And please remember to be well, be whole. You're doing all the sacrifice for others, but make sure that you prioritize self, prioritize wellness. And as we like to say here on the Dynamic Doc Space, making sure you live your life wholly, fully on purpose, for a purpose. Please make sure to check out the other episodes. And thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more. Thanks, Dr. Tola.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Peace.
Bye, everyone.